Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in today's video. I want to show you something interesting. I want to show you how to just paint in watercolor. So think of painting as a spectrum, if you will. On the one hand, and by the way, yes, I did get a haircut that I did. It's the shortest my hair and beard have been in a while. On the one hand, you have working on a specific technique. It's very technical. You're learning the ropes and just how to basically get started. Now, on the other hand, you have something that is really different, and that is working in a focused, slow, very deliberate manner on a finished piece. Now, I like to explore the middle, and the middle to me is just painting, grabbing a few things, and this is key here, that you are actually interested in painting, and just going for it, not being too worried about the technique you're using or how you're painting. This is more like active exploration. So we can actually get started. Let's get rid of this one. With this scene, I took a bunch of clouds in the sky. Just a really, really nice view. Let me zoom in of these clouds. And I usually just grab a piece of paper like that. I don't even tape anything. I want to just use it freely. And what I'll do is just, again, explore what I currently have. I'm not trying to improve. I'm not trying to work on any specific skill or mindset or whatever. I'm just playing around with the medium, and I find that a lot of the growth to me happens in that space. Now, you may have a different experience, but this is one thing you can try exploring. And you'll see that I work very rough. I'm just about the doing. And this may not even be that vastly different from other videos or tutorials by me that you've seen, because a lot of the way I paint is that kind of an active exploration. This is great, I think, especially if you took a break from painting for a while and you're trying to get back to it. So a really low pressure way of doing it is to just re-explore what it feels like to paint, funny enough. So I'm going to be using phthalo blue. Everyone asks always quinacridone rose and lemon yellow. All Daniel Smith. Doesn't really matter, again, what brand you use or whatever. So I love about this the different combination between the grays and the blues. And I'm gonna just give it a try. Start with this nice gray here. And now you see, I feel like adding some water here to the bottom and using that to lighten things up a bit where I see them lighter. Okay, it's a very direct way of approaching this. This is how I feel at the moment. It's not how I would always practice this. Now, what's interesting about this approach is this approach of just painting, as I called it at the start of the video, is it's very hard to explain exactly what I'm doing. And the reason for that is clear. I don't know what I'm doing as well. I'm just exploring ideas. You see, if I like a certain line, if I like a certain shape, I'll try developing them. I'll try, getting all sorts of different. So, for example, this edge, I would love to set it free, so to speak. So I'm just going to add a bit of water in, and look at how I'm really working non-pressure. I'm really not putting myself under any pressure to produce anything out of this. And I'm going to show you some faster ones too in just a few seconds, okay? But to me, this is all about that active exploration. Feel like adding a bit of neutral tint to make things a little easier on the mixing end. So I'll do that. This is a very nice, rich, dark cloud. This is really complete freedom. Just go with what you see. And again, we're not working on a specific technique, but I'm also not really planning for this to be a finished piece of art. I'm really exploring ideas. So let's add a bit of warmth to that corner, because I do see a bit of that. So check this out. Not too much. Just a little bit here. And kind of open it up, add some water. And here we are getting to one of my favorite parts. I think it is time to explore some of the blue. Now, I don't want to overdo it because this is still quite a light sky, but I'm just going to put in. See. And I'm going to show you after this one a much faster, by the way, process, because I want to show you, usually this will be even faster right now because I haven't painted for a few days. I'm really into just going for it and enjoying the process. So you see something a little more ambitious for this kind of an approach, let's say, but really all about the doing. And one key element I find, look at how this cloud gets a little blue as it moves farther from us. So let's try capturing. One thing that's key to this is you really, to me at least, that's how it works. You really have to like the thing you're painting. This is the time to enjoy. This is not a finished piece at all. I'm not expecting anything of it. You want to make sure that you know, sometimes when you're practicing techniques, you're not forced to do anything, but you will feel maybe that certain reference photos and certain ideas lend themselves better to the technique you're trying to work on. So you may be a little more constrained by all sorts of different factors, but now is not the time to do that, okay? Now is really the time to just let loose. And you'll see in just a second. And you'll notice also how I drew these is so easygoing, and you'll see this even with more complex subjects in a second, because this was a fairly easy one to draw because, you know, a bunch of clouds. Shape can be quite abstract and they'll still work quite nicely. Dark blue clouds here on the corner. And let us not forget, there's quite a nice nuance here of warmth within this cloud. So I'm just going to put in a few groups of paint and then kind of let it blend together nicely. And that's a nice little exploration of an artistic idea, you know. I'm going to let this dry for a few seconds and let's move on to another one. So I have here, and I like sometimes to just take a big piece of paper and then use parts of it. Let me zoom out. So yeah, sometimes I'd love to explore a specific idea. Now in this case, what I really like about this scene is not the composition or anything like that. Not even the subject necessarily. I really like the colors. So I'm just gonna grab a bit of space here. I'm gonna get the horizon line around the middle. Underneath it, another line, and another line. So what you'll get is essentially this is dark, easy going. See, I'm not putting any pressure on myself. This is very easy going. And then I'm actually considering getting rid of this thing in the middle here. Let's set it to the side and then set a very light mountain here. That kind of goes around and goes back here. That makes a little more sense. Put one boat in, we don't need two. And we're ready to go. Now, I'm interested in exploring the colors here, so I probably won't even concern myself that much with flow or anything like that. At least not for the upcoming washes. So I'm actually going to start with a gray. I see a warm gray up top, so why don't we go with that? Now, I'm going to add gradually, bit of my mic here, I'm going to add gradually a bit of warmth to it, and that's the thing that's going to push us towards the colors we're seeing here at the bottom. All the way till we get a bit of I would even add a bit of Pyrrole Scarlet to make it a little more fiery in a way. You can play around with the angle very easily. You just grab that piece of paper you're working on. Try actually go for a bit of a then here around the bottom I'm gonna orange it up a bit. Very curious about the colors here. Keep this lower half kind of simple. One thing that interests me is how these mountains have a nuance of coolness to them, but in essence they're pretty much gray. Now that gray looks a little cool next to all of these yellows, so I want to check that out and maybe explore that idea further. I'm going to spray some water on it, and we're going to let it dry for a few seconds. Now, as we're exploring, I want to show you something cool, so I'm just going to grab a bit of my test paper here. Now, look at what happens when I take some neutral tint, okay? Pretty much what it's like out of the tube, and place it next to that. So do you see how there is just a bit of a feeling of coolness to it? Now I'm going to add a bit more of my phthalo in here. And just see what I can kind of develop. Recognizing a little purple too, so there's probably a bit of redness there as well. We're almost talking about a neutral, cool purple. So I'm just exploring. Again, feel free to explore the ideas. This may be too much. This is actually quite close. We could go with that. I actually want a bit of a larger quantity. So let's see what got us here. So a bit of neutral tint just as a basis. And then a bit of blue and a bit of quinacridone. And what's interesting about this combination is how nicely it's actually going to work with the yellow, because that's the complementary on the color wheel. And a lot of people have asked the video on the color wheel. I'm not the biggest expert, but I may be able to give some insights to it. So I'm going to start light, because what I recognize is, look at how much darker these pieces of land and rocks and whatever are. So we want to leave enough room for that to kind of breathe. Now, one thing you'll notice is the yellow, of course, will show through. That's something to take into consideration. Maybe you'll want to correct your mix to match that, because maybe the yellow is pushing it to be a little warmer. So I did a bit of that. But again, my main focus here is, let's explore how these colors interact, okay? Now, I'm actually seeing a bit more purple in this. I may be wrong. It looks like on a blind kind of analysis, it's a similar color. The thing is, because it's glazed on top of the yellow, a bit of it throws me off. This seems a little closer to what I'm after. And that's how you explore. Now, sometimes, because we're doing some free flow exploration, what I can do to the side is just play around with, so let's say I have, again, this bit of yellow. I'll try and see what these two look like. That's the beauty of just doing these exercises for fun. So maybe my lesson from this, because I actually think there is an interesting lesson, maybe is not to do a layer of yellow under these mountains, but to leave them to be the first wash on this area. See? So that way I can create this contrast without having to glaze over the yellow. Okay, just an idea to throw at you. This color combination looks a little more alike, whereas this glaze is on top of the yellow. Okay, so just something to think about. Now, as for this dark in the middle, it's so dark that you can probably just go with a kind of a black color. I'm just gonna go for that. Yeah, it's not gonna be anything brilliant, but that's actually the point here. We're exploring different ideas. And if you're always working on a finished painting, you may get just a limited opportunity to explore ideas. You may be able to, but I think for me, it limits me a bit. I need to have that freedom to not even practice specific techniques, rather, you can see here, ideas, approaches, testing it out. Ooh, I completely messed up the mountain on the right. I completely forgot that it goes all the way down to. Now, we're going to work towards mixing this weird thing we have with the darks here. And again, even if you feel like you didn't get necessarily the right mix, don't give up. Keep exploring the idea. That's exactly the point here. You want to develop a certain resilience towards this feeling of potential failure. I'm seeing here quite a bit of a gray. That gets closer to it. Let's give it a try and see what this looks like. And don't forget, you can always glaze more layers for it. Now, this is where you want to get it flat. Don't go too wavy, top, bottom, because we're looking at something from a low angle. That's one. And then that. There we go. Now, scenes are great for doing this kind of a thing. But one more thing that will really work for you is still life and objects that are concentrated in a way. So let me show you what I mean. And this is just something I'll do sometimes. To the side here on the same piece of paper again. I'll just grab whatever I have here. Let's actually do this. And I'll just play around with ideas, even coming from my head, which is something I barely show you, but I'll just do some basic stuff like this and figure out, okay, what's interesting, what's not. So let's try and keep some cleaner colors. Grab a bit of every color. See what we can create. And sometimes from that, an impression will pop, and maybe you'll want to turn it into something. Maybe you'll want to grab some shadow and pretend like just a random, ball or something like that. Right? Now, I actually like the nuance of color here, so let's see if we can play around with that. So a bit of the blue. Let's see if we can play in the nuance. That's really something I enjoy doing. A bit of blue. Now let's add a bit of more warmth to the mix and see what we get. You see? And as long as you don't veer too far off in any direction, it's interesting how everything you put on paper will still be harmonious and kind of nice looking. That's what I find. See, all of these colors are pretty close to one another in a way. They're all different versions of grays. And I love just exploring that idea. So for example, right now we have all sorts of muted colors. What happens if we take that same blue we used, just use a bit of a pure version of that, see? And what it looks like. And that may give you an idea. Maybe the next time I do clouds, for example, like these ones, maybe the next time I'll explore clouds, I'll try getting these types of grays for the bodies of the clouds, right? And this blue, it just gives you a bunch of stuff to play around with, which I think is great. Just playing around like that. Sometimes if you feel demotivated or you don't want to paint, just doing this bit of work can work out really nicely. Let's do, so I have a nice picture. I want to show you, sometimes I like to pick just a section of the scene, like for example, her hand here. I'm actually just going to flip it over. And again, even if you're not really that good or accurate in drawing yet, doesn't really matter because we're exploring visual ideas here. See? I get the hot dog fingers once in a while, especially if I don't do a proper build-up of the shape of the fingers or the gesture. I didn't do any of that here. I just went straight for it. And small finger. Gonna change it up a bit. This goes down here with the light. This goes here with the light. Look at what happens here. We have some very interesting shapes of light and shadow. And I think that makes for a very interesting little experiment. So what do I mean by that? So now we can experiment a bit with edges, right? Again, you saw I'm not a perfectionist even when it comes to the drawing stage. So there's actually something interesting going on here. You'll notice how all the fingers, I'm going to clean the palette, believe it or not. I want to start with a bit of a cleaner color. There we go. So just a bit of that quinacridone and pyrrole. Let's see what we get in the middle there. And you'll notice if we start small, just with one finger, okay. There's also a bit of yellow in there. And as we get here, now look, the finger is round. So let's explore. Just adding, let me zoom in a bit. So let's explore just adding a bit of water to soften the edge up a bit. Now look at what we've got. We've got a bit of a strong red here around the tip. So we'll bring in a bit more red. This tends to happen around the knuckles, around the edges. And then we'll continue with the next finger. And then we can test around a different technique, right? So let's maybe try first wetting area. And only then coming back with the paint and getting a smooth edge. So goes a little more to the back. And maybe I find that I prefer to first put the paint and then smoothen out the edge instead of pre-wetting, right? Now we're getting to some interesting areas. So we have a bit of that strong red here. A bit of the strong red here on the edge. And you see what happens if you just put the paint you want at a random almost spot, and then you add some paint to it. It's an interesting little experiment to see what you'd feel about the result, Doesn't even mean necessarily there's a correct way and you're doing it or not doing it. Some of it is learning about yourself and what you prefer and what you like. Now we get to this very interesting spot where, and you can go ahead and do more wet and wet, you know, you can darken some stuff here. Definitely feels like I can go ahead with this, you know, a bit with that here. And back here. Then here, we're gonna go and add these little sharp details, see? Then here, gonna have another sharp shape, but then explore again, smoothing out a bit of the edges. So whenever you come across, I would say whenever you come across an interesting photo that you'd like to explore, just give it a try and see what happens. Here I see a bit cleaner pink, so more of that. Whenever you find a picture you like, you know, save it or take a picture of a scene you like, and see what you can create out of it, you know? Be surprised at the little things. Now, as soon as we add some background to this, of course, I'm trying to figure out what would be a nice background to complement this. So that's another bit of thought process, right? Do I want it to be a little cool? Do I want it to be warm? I'm doing it here to the side. You can also go ahead and do it here on a spare piece of paper. Now, what I would like it to be is actually a neutral yellow. I'm going to add a bunch of yellow here. Grab whatever I have and see what I have here. So that's going to be add a bit of that Turner's yellow, if I'm not mistaken. I like the way it looks. And neutralize it with a bit of Carbazole Violet. Why not? Let's take this shortcut, and that's more like it. That's a combination I like. And then you can start practicing some negative shape, figuring out where the thing you're painting around is and what its shape is, because we're building it up. Because maybe we weren't as accurate in the first stage, but now we have an opportunity to fix some of our mistakes, right? Then we'll go around. We'll leave a highlight that I missed in the beginning. And we'll go close to where the paint is. And you see how it starts to develop, right? And then let's add a bit of blue to that. We'll make it a little green, so we'll add a bit more red to balance it a bit. More blue. And you see I'm mixing everything, the entire wash as one. Which can also be... but I like to choose just a small part of a reference photo and to focus on that and see what I can pull off with that. Now, you don't have to use as many colors as I have. You can actually minimize it to just 2. Now, a good place to start would be something like some kind of a blue and an orange, because that will lead to a lot of possibilities when it comes to warms, cools, you know. That could be doing this. But in any case, see, that's kind of how it goes. And I got a hand. It's terrible. It's not that good, but it's okay because, again, we're just exploring different ways and different means. It's actually really bad now that I look at it. But at least the contrast around it is good. But in any case, yeah. So see a bunch of experiments, color, specific parts of a scene, and seeing your weaknesses, right? So now I see, oh, okay, my color mixing isn't that good, right? When the colors are simple and more gray, I have an easier time recognizing the shapes and the different edges, you know, or not, or you just do it and whatever let's leave this one here, and whatever the end result is, it is, and you accept it. But the idea is there's a middle ground, so you don't have to work so hard on techniques. And I think most people don't go that way. Most people don't just practice and focus on techniques. I actually think some could benefit from it in isolation. Again, even wash, dry brush, all of that can be done on just a blank piece of paper. And then, instead of every painting matters, and every painting has to be very important, this is a good way to break that off. I do see a lot of people that just every painting they aim for it to be finished. Nothing wrong with that. I just feel like there are better ways to move forward at least between the more complex, bigger paintings. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know in a comment down below. I've been working on a bunch of stuff and have been dealing with a lot of stuff. It's been a challenging time, so you'll forgive me for being a little quieter on the YouTubes and on Instagram, posting a bit less videos. I'll kind of feel it out. Some weeks I just feel like I need more time for other things. Some weeks I don't feel like doing specific things, so I'll just skip them. And I'm really exploring the way I feel about what I'm doing and trying to always reorient and find the best way for me to create for you. So we'll thank you a lot. We'll thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. Really, really do appreciate it. Check out any of the courses. Everything is going to be linked below. And the reference photos I use will also be down below, so you can go ahead and paint them at your leisure. I will see you again in the next vid. Take care.